Welcome to the MMHP in the 989, channeling all styles and eras of Michigan music history. Recorded live from the Michigan Rock Legends Hall of Fame, located inside the Bay County Historical Museum.
From the city by the bay.
Featuring Dr. J, Fred Reif, Mr. Mike, and your host, Scott Baker. Brought to you by the 989 Podcast Network and the Michigan Rock Legends Hall of Fame, located at the Bay County Historical Society Museum at 321 Washington Avenue, Bay City, Michigan.
Okay, we are podcasting tonight, as usual, from the Michigan Rock and Roll Legends Hall of Fame, located at the Historical Museum of Bay County at 321 Washington Avenue in downtown Bay City, Michigan.
Good evening, everybody. Back here, Michigan Rock and Roll Legends. How you doing? Johnny Burke in the house.
Legends.
Michigan Rock and Roll Legends Hall
Oh,
of
you mean
Fame.
here? This place.
As well as our guests.
This is, well, thank you. No,
Yes.
that's not really.
So that's what usually flows. You were reading my mind.
Well, you are certainly a legend in radio circles around here. No doubt about that.
Yeah, more in some sort of bad legend or infamous legend.
Infamous.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Hey, you gotta take us all the way back. I know we're gonna have a nice long evening of some chatting here, and you do this all day. So you're probably like, let me get home. But take us back to how you even got into this and where did that all begin? Where'd you grow up?
Well, I grew up in Ohio, in Cleveland, Ohio area, and I wanted to be in drama. It was the only thing I wanted to do. And so I went to Kent State University after high school. I acted a lot throughout high school. And when I got to Kent State University, I just wasn't into it anymore. I just didn't necessarily feel like I wanted to do drama anymore. And I ran into one of my roommates who told me that he was going to start out at the radio station on campus there, and that he had worked in radio in Secaucus, New Jersey, where he was from earlier, and that I should try for radio. So I went to this meeting for a radio station on the campus and got a job and started working right that September 1972 was my first radio gig on what they call a carrier current station. I don't know if you know what that is. It just runs through the electric wires around the whole campus, and then if you're in close proximity to those wires, which you would be in the dorm, you would be able to pick the station up.
Mm-hmm.
And just did that for a while, and then got into commercial radio, and I've been doing it ever since.
Wow. So you're born in Cleveland,
Yeah.
the home of the Rock and Roll
Hall of Fame. Yep.
Yes. What do you think about that? I mean, I was always thinking that it should have been Detroit.
Well, you could go to Philadelphia, and they'll bend your ear about that too, and there's a lot of other places. I thought the choice of Cleveland was great, and the reason that I think that came about more than anything else was a radio station, WMMS. And WMMS in Cleveland had a guy on it called Kid Leo, and he was the afternoon DJ, and he was responsible for getting a lot of guys record contracts or building up their record contracts and getting their records sold. And Cleveland was a hotbed. Bruce Springsteen was hotter in Cleveland than he was in New Jersey, and he wasn't hot anywhere else. So they kind of rewarded the city for all of the hits that they had made over the year. Of course, Alan Freed,
Well, right,
rock and roll, it was really Akron, Cleveland. But yeah, he's another one who was responsible for rock and roll in the Northeast Cleveland, Northeast Ohio, I should say. So that's how I think that came about. I'm fine with them picking Cleveland, frankly.
Well, it's nice. It's close. You know,
Yeah.
I've been there at least a dozen times.
Still
It's
considered
always fun.
Midwest.
Yeah. Well, really. Right. Yeah. And, you know, Cleveland went after it.
Yes.
And Detroit sat on their hands and didn't do anything.
Right.
You know, so.
But yeah, and Detroit has the Motown Museum, which is a real feature, and I think it's just as important in a lot of ways as the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Well, especially now that they're putting all that money in, it's
Yeah.
really going to be a big
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah.
But, you know, the poor old Hitsville, that's really all they had for years. I mean, it was great, but,
Yeah.
you know, it was pretty small.
Which is what I kind of almost bemoan the fact that it's going to be dwarfed
Well,
by this
yeah.
big building, because I think that was the coolness of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, of course, that'll still be there,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
there's
But it'll be dwarfed.
the monster
Yeah.
behind it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's it. So, when did you get into rock and roll?
Well, on and off, obviously being in top 40 radio kind of seeds that. And there's a real blurring of the lines that starts happening in the late 70s and early 80s anyway. So when I worked in Buffalo, New York at the Fox, and it was 103.3 The Fox in Buffalo, New York was a classic rock station. It had the exact same logo as we have now at our 103.9, the Fox in Flint. And that was the first classic rock station that I had worked at. But everything along the way, we're playing a lot of the same songs. In the way radio is now, there's 4 stations in one building. Mm-hmm. And when I was at WHNN in Saginaw, we were playing what we called classic hits, but it included a lot of the classic rock that we play on classic rock stations. We had a classic rock station 50 feet away down the hallway, and the program director, Stan, if you guys know him, Stan Parman, would walk by our door when we're playing, ZZ Top or something, and just nodding his head like, oh my God, Lord, just shaking his head. How the hell are they doing this to me? Because he's trying to program a classic rock station. We're playing the same ones with we're 100,000 water, and we covered half the state of Michigan, so we killed him.
Well, I guess what I was getting at is when you were a kid, what got you into rock?
Beatles.
The Beatles.
Well, right. And then discovered people that came before them after that because I started to get into the genre. But I was only in 1963. I was probably in second grade. So everybody heard about the Beatles. And of course, when I kept hearing this legend of the Beatles, I was picturing guys in Beatle costumes. But
you're a kid, yeah.
When I finally saw them, and of course saw them on Ed Sullivan that night, everybody did. Yeah. That locked it in.
Yeah.
My father said they're not going to be around when they're 45, so why do you even waste your time?
So no one would have ever found you down the line on a country channel or a gospel channel.
Listen, brother, I have done everything.
I thought you told me you have.
I've done talk, I've done country, I used to do something called WDBN, The Quiet Island. That was Ray Conniff and his orchestra. I've done that. I've done public radio. I did NPR. I've done it all.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there was just no stopping. It just went where you were heading.
Yeah. I look at radio. It gets inside of you, and it's changing drastically now, and it's not inside a whole lot of people anymore. Frankly, we've lost a lot of what radio was. But during those years, I didn't care what I was making. I didn't care where I was working. I just wanted a job on the air somewhere. And I was constantly going, not constantly because I didn't move that much, but I was a couple of stations in Cleveland, a couple of stations in Elyria, Ohio, and then a couple of stations in Flint, and then off to Las Vegas, and then to Buffalo, and then back to Saginaw. So there was a lot of moving around involved. Didn't matter. I love it.
Were you married at the time?
Yeah, well, yes, and I'm still married to I call her my first wife because, well, she is my first wife, but I'm still married to my first wife. She's not as cool about driving all over the world, but she's been along for the ride, and she's been a good trooper.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That she went along for the entire ride. I mean, you've been in a lot of places, man. That's hard to have anybody pack up and.
Well, it's because they get sick of you every once in a while, and you got to move on.
Yeah, there we go. Well, I have to ask you this: when you mentioned Kent State, you probably were at Kent State after the 4 kids were killed by the National Guard.
I lived about 45 minutes from there. Everybody in our area went to Kent State University. So I was down there on that weekend before.
Wow.
Because a lot of my friends were already in school there. And it happened in 1970. I went to Kent State in 1972, so 2 years later. But we traveled down there on weekends, partied down there all the time. Pot was only $15 an ounce. So that was the place to be.
Yeah. Okay. So what was the, among your friends, was there a lot of outrage, when the student protesters were shot by the National Guard?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, that was, worked on a documentary for that. That was so earth shattering and so huge and so devastating to the community. Like I said, I was not going to school there at the time, but I knew a lot of people who were, and it was just a debacle. It was super traumatizing. It was.
Yeah, and then you have the song by Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, which kind of crystallized the moment.
Yeah,
maybe more than almost any other song I can think of. That really addressed that particular situation. So what kind of radio stations did you listen to in Ohio? I mean, everybody kind of listened to the radio.
Back in those days, in the early 60s, it was probably very much the same here. DJs were, when they went out on remote somewhere, there were 20,000 people there. I mean, because it was such a rarity and it was hard to pull off. Now you can pull out a phone and do a radio station remote, but those days it took a lot of work and preparation, so there were big deals. And I listened to a station in Cleveland, Ohio. It was called Wixie 1260. I love that. WIXY 126. 1260 on the AM dial. So Wixie 1260. And they had a guy there that you might be familiar with because he was also at CKLW, the Duker, Larry Morrow. And we used to follow him around. I ended up working with him years later, but we used to, wherever he was, people would show up in droves. And I saw, that being the egomaniac that I certainly was at the time, I hopefully have gotten over that, but it was something to see. And you said, that's for me. Dad thinks I'm a piss ant, but I can get out there and do that and get a crowd around me. Maybe Dad won't call me a piss ant anymore.
See something you latch onto.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So your first foray into Michigan was in Flint, WTR?
Yeah, WTRX. Yeah.
Right.
I got married on August 9th, and we moved there on August 11th in 1980.
How does that work? How did you reach out to them, or did they reach out to you?
I had sent a tape out. I was working at WGAR part-time in Cleveland, Ohio. It's a great radio station where a lot of great guys have gone. Don Imus was working there.
Wow. Okay.
So it was a really great radio station. I had sent some tapes out, though, to try and get a full-time job, and I had sent them to a station in Peoria, Illinois. I think it was Peoria, Illinois, owned by Midwest or Mid-America Media. Mid-America Media owns stations in Peoria and wherever the Caterpillar is located. Is that Peoria? Wherever Caterpillar, maybe it's another town. And in Flint. And they sent the tape from there. They had no use for me in Peoria, but they sent it to the Flint guy, who was a guy named Jim Meltzer, who was also from Cleveland. He's from Shaker Heights, Ohio. He was the general manager of the station. And it just so happens that he had heard me on WGAR because you could hear that station at night. It was a 50,000 clear-watt station. You could hear it in Flint, Michigan. And he had heard me. And he called me up and offered me a job.
Wow.
Okay. So you were basically a music DJ at that time? There was no talk.
Yeah, no, I was a real rookie. I was a raw rookie, and I was stealing jokes from other DJs and stealing style from other DJs. Which way fake it till you make it, and it worked. Over time, I kind of developed my own way of doing some of that attitude and just developed my own shtick and got in a lot of trouble along the way.
Your voice, though, is something that definitely everybody knows the voice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that from day one?
Not as much. You know what? I thought so. And everybody always told me I had a nice voice. But when I listen back, I've got a documentary that I did called The Death of a Decade, the Kent State Story. And it's a 2-album set. And every once in a while, on May 4th, we'll play a little bit of that on the radio station. I sound like a munchkin. So, no, I don't think it was like this. It was apparently good enough at the time, but it was not. This is whiskey, cigarettes, age, screaming at my kids.
Yeah, all right.
It's been well honed.
Yes.
Yeah.
How long did you stay in Flint then?
8 years initially, and then I got a call from a agent that I knew that wanted to place me out in Las Vegas, and I said, "Hell yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun." So I moved out to Las Vegas.
How was it living out there? You had a family by that time?
Yeah, I did. And they were young. They were all young. We loved it out there. We had a great time, but it was a city that was in transition at the time. It was really developing very, 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 very fast. And in the process, a lot of the marginal residents were being shoved aside, and they were getting angry, and things were happening. There were lots of, and what's crazy about Vegas is that every vagrant in the world goes there because they can hide. Anybody who's trying to escape the police goes there because they're trying to hide, and there's crowds, massive crowds everywhere. So it's very easy for people who are on the lam to get lost there. And even Charles Manson was there for a while. So a lot of weird stuff would happen. They'd find decapitated bodies near the school or things like that. And they have a weird, or at the time they did a weird way of busing kids. The only busing they did was in one grade. I think it was sixth grade. You take the kids out of the one part of town and put them in the part of town where there was barbed wire around the building. And the kids were getting old enough that they were going to have to go to sixth grade pretty soon. And I had an offer back in Buffalo, New York. So I took it on the lam.
Okay. Winters in Buffalo.
Yeah.
That must have been quite an experience.
I flew in. They had 2 feet of snow that day. It was amazing.
Welcome.
Yeah, and I was coming from Las Vegas in the desert.
So how did your mom and dad react to the career choices you were making? I mean, how did that feel for them, seeing you moving around?
It's funny. My mother in high school was a valedictorian of her class, and they was on the student council. They had a radio station that they ran, and my mother was on radio when she was in high school, and she loved the fact that I was doing it. My father used to practice being a DJ up in his attic. He had a little crystal set that he would try and broadcast to the house next door, So they thought it was really cool that I was getting in radio, but they thought it was a hobby.
Oh.
They didn't, they thought like they were in it, shortly or playing around with it for part of their lives. They thought, okay, yeah, sooner or later he's going to get a real job. And no.
Yeah, no.
I'd suck at real jobs. I really, you know me well, Scott Baker. I'm not that nice a guy, and I would be really horrible at anything.
You can sell vehicles, can't you?
Well, I do sell cars because, again, what is that? Just talking, right? That's something I can do. The thing I can do best is talk.
Yeah. That's cool. I was curious about mom and dad, what their thoughts. You know how everybody's like, well, I'm in music or I'm a DJ, and it's like, how long's that gonna last, kid, or something? I've never heard that story from you, so that's great.
I didn't think it was possible when I was a kid to get on the radio. I thought that was an impossibility. I thought it was like getting to Hollywood. But it really isn't very hard.
And AM stations too from the start. Did you fall right into the FM thing when that hit?
Yeah, no, FM was around longer than that. Initially FM started in the 60s. It wasn't very popular. In fact,
it was just elevator music
exactly
at that time.
Okay. The only reason that Liggett Broadcasting started with WHNN up in Saginaw is because it was a cheap FM station. He couldn't afford an AM station. So the FMs were being given away practically. So I wasn't in it then. I was in AM radio until really about 1988. Yeah, I think that was it. When I moved to Las Vegas, may have been the first FM station. Sure, it was. Yeah, that was it.
88.
I had worked on all AM stations until then.
And you worked in New York City also?
I worked in New York City. No, Buffalo, New York.
Oh, Buffalo, New York. Yeah. Okay.
No, New York City, no.
Buffalo
I've been
was
mugged in New York City, but I've never been.
Yeah, that's right.
Was Buffalo another FM from one to the other?
Yeah, that was the 103.
You stayed on FM from that point on?
Yeah, 103.3, the Fox was in Buffalo. And yeah, it was, and I love Buffalo, by the way. People give it a bad rap. It's like Cleveland gets a bad rap. It's like Detroit. Well, Detroit deserves it sometimes. But Buffalo is a really cosmopolitan, kind of a mini New York City in a lot of ways. It's got a lot of culture. It's got a lot of restaurants and dining and bars and live music, and it's a pretty neat place.
Awesome. Did you ever make it to Canada for any stints over there?
No.
Seems like we've had every DJ through here has been in Canada or Toronto at some point. I was just curious.
Well, I mean, to visit it? Yeah.
No, I mean to broadcast.
No, hell, I don't even know how you do that. Do you have to get a CCC instead of an FCC, or Canadian? I have no idea. I've never heard of anybody that worked in Canada.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
We've had
Jim Bauer.
Jim Bauer. Well, we had a couple of them on here.
I know Jim Bauer. I'm trying to remember where I know him from, but that name is...
Well, he used to be originally on WKNX.
Okay, all right.
Back in the 60s with Bob Dyer.
Well,
and
Bob was a friend of mine. I loved Bob Dyer. What a great man.
And was Rick, was he?
They both were Toronto.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We had two Toronto cats on here already.
Rick Allen you're talking about.
Yeah,
right?
Rick Allen. Yep.
Yeah, he worked at CKLW, I think,
Right.
didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, he's the one that broke that Cooper record before Welcome to Nightmare came out with Dick Wagner. And it's like, holy crap, he got to play it right directly out of the studio acetates. I was like, whoa, that was a great story.
Did you really? Yeah.
Was there any point in time? I mean, your shows have definitely become Johnny shows, and people know how to go about that. Was there any point in time where the music really drove you too equally? Like, man, this music's good. I love this.
All right, well, here's what's happening right now in my life, and that is exactly what it is. We've been, I took my act from WHNN to the Fox, and it didn't necessarily transfer all that well. It's been a little bit of a rough road, and primarily because the show that had been there before me was a real rockin' music show that didn't do a lot of what we're doing, and they wanted me to do that. They were trying to build the station in a different way. So when I went in there and started doing that, I said, well, maybe we should feature a little bit more of the music. Well, and we do play enough. We played like 6 songs an hour at that time. But this last maybe 6 months or so, we've been trying to integrate more music into our personality. So we use our personality to play with music now. So we have features like the Shake and Wake at 6:40 in the morning, where we play some song that's been suggested by the audience, that they turn the radios up at home and they try and wake the whole house up, because most people are getting up around that time anyway, and just make it an appropriate song. You know, we did Catmandu one morning with Seger, and we've done a couple of other really good ones. But anyway, we just started that a couple of weeks ago. Plus we do another one. Steph Barber joined the show, is what changed it a lot, because we were wanting to go in that direction. And I've known Steph for a while, and she knows her stuff, and she is a real rock chick. She is. So she brings a lot to the show, and she helps to influence the things that we do by doing that. She has Steph's Fox Flashback, where she'll reach back and play a song we don't play quite so often, and has an interesting story. Today we were talking about the Outlaws, which is great because there's a new member of the Outlaws. He's been there for 2 years now. He's from Michigan.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool.
So we did Ghost Riders in the Sky today, and that was, we get all this reaction from these people because they're sick of hearing the same music all day long. So we're trying to feature new stuff, but it's within the same genre, within their same emotional plane where they would like to be. So we do it with a lot of homegrown. We do a lot of Seger on that show.
Oh, sure.
But and then we started doing a couple more things. Like we did a poll. We do a music poll. We take it into the 10 o'clock or the 9 o'clock hour now, where we say, all right, it's blizzard outside. Give me the best blizzard song you can think of, or Thunderstruck or whatever. We start playing that and just using the personality, but playing the music and talking about the music.
Wow, that's cool, man.
Sounds
That's
like a great
good
idea.
bend.
Well, it's
Finally,
such great music. Look around. What are all the tours? If they're not country, well, in fact, if they're not classic rock, they're country, because classic rock's number one, country's number two, and it's the same audiences in a lot of cases.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Yep. Wow. I know Larry McRae had a show on your on Fox 2 for a little while.
Yeah.
On Sundays, I think it was.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
He told me, he's like, man, tell Johnny I said hi. I said, okay.
I love him. He's such a great
man. Yeah.
I worked with his son over at Susky too. He had a son that he found about a little bit later on in life, and the guy was a great guy, but he just passed away suddenly too. Larry's son, and Larry is on a roll right now.
Oh yeah,
man, is he hot right now?
Yeah. Definitely. We're loving it. We're loving watching it. I get to actually be involved in it quite a bit with him. So
good for you.
Yeah, man. I'm just enjoying the ride. Every week we're talking about something. So
cool, man. That's great.
Yeah. So my question, I guess, and I love where you took it because it's still current. The music thing's a big deal to you. But when did the show become, holy crap, I've really got the ability to talk to this wherever I'm at, was it 88, like when you went to Buffalo or Vegas? Or when did it become, man, this is now Johnny? When I
felt like I was me.
Yeah.
Probably at WTRX, because we started to develop, I was there 8 years. So when I was starting out, I was pretty new and pretty raw. Yeah. I started in radio in 1972, so I was 8 years later, after a lot of part-time gigs in Cleveland. Yeah. I was in my big morning show gig here in Flint. So was imitation at first, but we've quickly developed that. We developed all our own bits, our own things, and I felt very much at home, especially when I got the call from the agent out of the blue that wanted to bring me out to Las Vegas. So I felt that, and then I got some reaching out from Chicago and some other places a couple of times.
You still get that?
No, not anymore. I'm too old. I think I
didn't know how that worked.
Burke, he's still around?
Yes. When did you start working with a partner?
With who?
When you had a partner?
But my first partner was at WTRX. When I first walked in the door, they already had a girl there by the name of Debbie Fields, and then Doug Fisher was the sports guy, and we worked him into a more prominent role on the show. And Art Reed was our news guy, and he just played the authoritarian guy, but he was on constantly throughout the hour too. So we had a crew right off the bat.
All right. Sort of like was it WKRP in Cincinnati?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. That's the idea. And that's the way you do it. I mean, if you look around all the successful radio shows, and I try to explain this to people, sometimes they don't get it, but they're ensemble shows. Mm-hmm. If you think about it, they're not very, I can't think of one. Maybe back in the day, J.P. McCarthy, obviously, but he was surrounded with people in the studio with him too. They all have ensembles. You have to have more than one person in there, and that's where we took it from on the Fox. And frankly, he was doing very, very well solo there when they brought me in, and we tried the ensemble thing, but we weren't featuring the music. We're just doing crazy stuff, And classic rock crowds are different than everybody else, and I don't know why that is. It takes a while for them to warm to you. Once they do, they can become fiercely loyal. But if you screw with their music, they're all over you.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting.
What is classic rock right now?
Don't trap me.
I know.
The problem is, there's no good definition anymore. Classic rock, to be honest with you, goes from about 1970 to 1976 out of 2 studios in California, and it involves about 6 groups, and you're done.
Oh.
So
Eagles.
So
one of them.
So we've had to expand that over the year because the repetition will kill you. And as the demographic ages, you're going to lose all your advertising money. So you've got to kind of fudge it. So obviously it's not classic rock, but it's a classic song from the rock era that will play a lot of 80s, 90s, even on into the early 2000s.
It's a good definition way to put it now.
Yeah.
When's the last time you physically put a needle on a record?
Oh, I don't even know. Actually, I do have a record player at home. So outside of that, no, at radio stations, good Lord, the old, and then the song would start. The cue scratches at the beginning of all the records. Oh, it was crazy time back then, man.
Didn't Terry Knapp work at WTRX?
Terry Knight.
Well, he became Terry.
Oh, okay. I didn't know his name was Knapp before that. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
That was
yes,
his
he
real
did.
name, I think.
Yes,
Right.
he stood on the roof of this gave me an idea for a bit that I did many years later that people bring up all the time. But he got up on the roof of WTRX and played alley-oop nonstop, continuously, over and over again until the cops came and arrested him and took him down.
He didn't drop turkeys on anybody, though, did he?
No turkeys. That's where they could fly.
That's wild. Cool.
Well, we have to ask this. I think probably, we've had a number of different guests that have called in, but probably none more famous around these parts than Question Mark.
Oh, no kidding. Are
Maybe
you going to ask me to psychologically evaluate him, or are you going to just ask me about his music?
Well, just whatever you'd like to say. I know he's an unusual character.
And that's the best way to define him right there. He's a character. He's a rock guy. Look at Gene Simmons and how wacky he can be sometimes, and look at Alice and with Alice it's distinctly 2 different people. With Question Mark, it's just you get him. He's that guy all the time, and we got along well for a while. He drove me a little nuts sometimes. He's a great guy. He's very persistent. Here's the thing: he is a legend. I don't care how you dice it. David Bowie called it the greatest garage song of all time. He is a legend, and he is entitled to be a prima donna, is the way I look at it. And so we always got along fine. I must have said something wrong one day. He will not speak to me anymore. And I don't know why it is. And he allowed me to give him a hard time and everything on the air. He wanted that at the time. He would call in almost every day, and sometimes it drove me a little nuts because I was in the middle of other stuff. But I'd put him on because he is who he is, and I felt that he deserved that. But he would allow me to argue with him, to tell him, you're a little nuts. What is this business about being from Mars and all this other stuff? But at one point, whatever I said, and he just cut it off. Now, I still talk to his manager. I've talked to everybody else around him tons of times. Mm-hmm. He won't talk to me.
Wow. Have you seen him lately?
I have not.
He doesn't look real well.
Oh, I need to get over.
I
know where he lives. I'm just going to go knock on the door one day.
It looks like he's having a few health problems.
I'll bet he is.
Yeah.
He was great. He looked like Question Mark all his life, because those guys that wear sunglasses and stuff. Yeah. Plus, he stayed in such great shape. He could open his shirt up and he'd still have rock hard abdomen. He was tight. So he maintained his youth for so long. But that's you're kind of hiding stuff in the meantime, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Who was your favorite interview over the years, or a couple?
That's tough.
Yeah.
Plus my memory sucks so bad I can't remember all of them. But we've interviewed everybody from Bill Cosby to Bob Newhart to Frank Zappa to I'm trying to think. Obviously REO, but everybody in the world gets to interview REO.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Talk about Zappa. Mike,
Zappa, best line from the interview. And time everybody asks me about Zappa, I tell them this. We were in the locker room at Kent State University. I was still in college, and he performed at Kent State University, and they allowed us, as the KSU radio station, to interview him. So he had a long interview, or a couple of us who were doing it. And I said, you went to college for a while. Why'd you drop out? He said, I went to college for one reason, to get laid. I got laid, and I got the fuck out. Did I just do a word on the podcast you guys don't normally?
No, you're in the safe zone.
Go to.
Okay,
Okay, all right.
you're good.
That's hilarious. Kent State too. Amazing.
Wow.
I know you don't have a fear of talking about some stuff, so give us some of the ones that you just don't care if you ever talk to them again, whether you tell us
Tina Louise.
Tina Louise.
Tina Louise. Oh, and Dave Coulier. And not that I don't want to talk to them again, but I'm sure they don't want to talk to me again because with Tina Louise, she had a strict rule: you never bring up Ginger. Well, why the hell would you have her on the air for any other reason? Okay? So don't ask me about Ginger. Okay, well then the interview is off. Well, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to have Tina Louise on the air. So you always save the bad questions for the very end. Yeah. So we talked about everything, and it was stupid. It was Phil, and then finally. I said to her, so tell me, have you seen any of the gang from Gilligan's Island? And I think I might have called her Ginger or something like that. Click. That's all I got was a click.
No way.
Yeah. Now, Dave Coulier, I saved the question about Alanis Morissette to the end of the interview. And then he didn't hang up on me, but he said, I thought we'd agreed not to talk about that. I said, yeah, but everybody wants to know about it, Dave. Talk to me about Alanis. No, not another.
That pops on the net in little stream things every so often. Not your interview, but like him and her.
Yeah.
And the whole thing and the song written about him.
Yeah. But those were fun. I got my favorite interview back and forth because of the way it went was Olivia Newton-John.
No way.
And because I roped her into letting me sing Summer Lovin' with her.
Oh, dude. I wish there was a tape of that.
There is a tape. I have it, but it was just about a verse of it. And it was probably a year and a half before she died.
Oh, man.
So it was pretty cool. And I had always been in love with her. Who wasn't when we were young?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. That's cool. Now, who are some that you've interviewed that you wished you could do it again, or you thought, man, I should have got a lot more out of this interview. People just didn't get it.
Well, that's a tough question. It's a good question. I think Bob Newhart, I could have talked to him for 2 days.
Yeah.
I mean, he was so affable and so knowledgeable and told such great stories, and that was a fun one. Did Bill Cosby, which at the time was fun, but little did I know.
Yeah. So was Newhart as droll in
Yes.
person as he plays on television?
He was, he started in stand-up, but he started as an accountant, and then he went into stand-up, and he took his accountant personality with him to stand-up. So that's his roots. He can talk. He can ad-lib like crazy. He's really, really good.
Did you find yourself early on having to get out and promote the radio station and do events outside of the radio? I mean, I remember obviously Johnny and Blondie in our area of the Tri-Cities. You guys were everywhere. Every week there was something, or whether it was together however it fell, but you were consistently outside of work almost as much as you were on the air. When did you start running into that, or was that always a thing?
Yeah, that's always there, and frankly, if you don't do that, you're not doing good radio, and that's what's been lost. A lot of these corporate stations won't do them anymore. Yeah. Why do baseball teams have a home field? Why do rock stars tour? Why do you've got to get out? You got to be with the people. They got to feel a connection to you. If they don't, you're lost. They'll tune you in for a little bit. Man, I got to get the temperature. I don't care about him.
So that was a thing that you didn't even care. You were like, I'm all on board because I know it brings them in.
That's what brings it in, and that's where you do your stunts, and that's where you get your notability, where people start talking about you. I saw him over here jumping into the river. My buddy had a guy in Cleveland that made himself into a human teabag and was dunked into Lake Erie by a helicopter. You do that kind of stuff just because you're trying to get attention.
Human teabag.
Not in the teabag that you're thinking of.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Did you, when you started out, a lot of, like legends like Dick Fabian and Bob Dyer, were every weekend they were out DJing teen dances and so on. Now, you started in the 70s, really?
Right.
Were there still teen dances at that point?
Oh, yeah.
So that was kind of the way of at
we
least
did a lot
getting
of that.
out and meeting your fans. and
Another
so
thing
on.
my wife almost divorced me over is carrying those albums around for me at the gigs and stuff. We used
Yeah.
to do them all the time. I mean, from weddings to reunions to teenage dances at the schools to we even took to the grade school a couple of times just because they wanted us. So, yeah, we did a lot of that.
Yeah.
And I didn't mind that at the time. I would hate it now. I don't know how you could even do it. Well, now they do it all. Take the phone and hook a speaker up to it.
Yeah.
It's hard now because I don't think kids have the unifying. Music is not the unifying factor for kids like it was.
Right. Well, it's because it's so segmented.
Yeah,
They're getting
exactly.
their, you used to get it. You'd had 3 radio stations that played your kind of music in town, okay? And that's where you got all your music. You got all of your TV from 3 or 4 TV stations in town. It's so segmented now. So you don't get these big movements, all the kids like this one or all the kids like that. If it doesn't go through TikTok and if you're trying to promote it on your own, you're sunk.
Yeah, it's the reason why there aren't teen clubs anymore.
That's right.
It can't work anymore like it did.
No, I agree.
Well, piggybacking on that, did you ever run into any? And we've actually had this pop into our podcast a lot lately. Anytime pay and play things come up to you, where you were like, "Hey, yeah, we'll get you on the air," or did you have to deal with that, or did you?
Well,
do that?
sometimes, I mean, you do. I mean, people, and sometimes your best stuff can come from that, and sometimes there's just no way, and you're trying to be courteous and nice and trying to put them off. But,
Like Scott Baker.
but I've met some really cool characters that way that have become parts of my show, either on the phone or in person. Sometimes Art Neal is that kind of guy now. He's not working for anybody but me these days, and it's only because I love that goofiness that he brings.
Another
to
guy that went from media to car salesman.
Exactly, he did. But he's no longer doing that either. He just goes around drinking beer and putting up Facebook posts.
I see him on Facebook.
Every time,
You know him,
he's
Mike?
always got a beer.
I think Mike must know him.
By the way, where's the beer?
No shit. Sorry about that, brother. Sorry about that, man. No, I was curious if you ever ran into some dire pay to play or stuff that was uncomfortable.
No,
to you.
look,
what makes you uncomfortable on the radio?
I don't look, I used to do the record trips. When we were in college, we had to beg record companies for the records. We weren't the same as a commercial station. But I knew all their tricks because they would tell us about it. There was a guy in this area, Tom, and I can't think of his last name right
Gilardi.
now. Yep. Tom Gilardi, who I worked with a lot, and he told me a lot of the underbelly of what was going on. That was never a part of my day. I was never a music director of a breaking radio station. I never got anybody.
You had your show, and that was you didn't have to worry about that kind of crap.
But I would But people still come to me with records and things like that today, and I will, especially if they're local. And by the way, people are doing a lot better job of recording themselves today than they used to. I mean, the music, because they've got so much more technology at their fingertips, they do such a great job, and they understand music better, I think, now than we used to when we were younger. In a lot of ways, they've just come up with very nice songs. There's some really good music out there that's being done by local people. Scott Baker's one of them.
Oh, thank you, brother. Thank you. You've been a huge part in me getting out there for all. So I man, anything I can ever do to repay you, I appreciate
bless
it.
you, man.
Thank you. You and Blondie were just like number one on getting me out there. So I've never had anything like that. I had cousins call me from places I did not know I had cousins from.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool.
They were like, we heard you on Johnny and Blondie today. Yeah. And I'll never forget it because it was like, wow, that's such another zone once you get to radio. It's like billboards,
Yeah.
No, Johnny, you got anything else, Gary?
I don't know, unless you want to talk about your partners that you've been working with.
Steph Barber.
Barber.
Blondie.
You mentioned her.
No, Blondie was the biggest part of my life in radio. She and I were partners for the longest time. It wasn't our doing that we're no longer together. It just kind of happened the way radio happens, and we were escorted out of the radio station one day after a particularly great show. We had Rob on that day, Rob Little, the comedian. We were rolling. We were hitting every cylinder, and then walk out of the studio laughing and high-fiving and slapping each other on the back, and the program director comes over and said, "You got 15 minutes?" And I saw the corporate people behind him. I said, "Okay, this is it."
No, that was that story.
Yeah, I didn't know if I should bring that up to you. Why did that happen? I mean, you guys were so popular. Right?
The corporations, and I'm going to be very specific here. Not specific. I'm going to be very general, but I'm going to cast a lot of misery down, because what has happened to radio over the last and it's one of my favorite guys in a lot of ways for a lot of things he did. Ronald Reagan deregulated the broadcast industry, and it ruined it. Corporations saw a fast buck to be made because they could consolidate the radio stations in a lot of ways and syndicate things and do all kinds of things to make it a more efficient model business-wise, but a horrible model for communities. Because the community, if you remember when you were growing up, radio was so much a part of the community. The mayor was on there all the damn time, and all the local the politicians were on there, and everybody that you knew was talking about what was on the radio that day. And it was a community thing, and they would talk about the local baseball teams and the local hockey teams. Corporate America didn't care about that. In fact, they said, if you're going to have those people on, if you're going to have that charity on, charge them $500. If you're going to have this event going on, you've got to charge them for it. You can't go down there and broadcast from the local minor league because you're trying to promote it. They don't want promotion to the community. They want cash. And then they would take all of that cash out, not reinvest it in the people or anything, and keep. It was highway robbery. It is highway robbery. It's still occurring, and they continue to go bankrupt. I understand that Cumulus, the owner of my former radio station, is about to file either their third or fourth bankruptcy in the last 5 years. It's because they don't know what they're doing. They're trying to run a community local model with a national footprint somehow, and I probably didn't even say that right, but you get what I'm saying here. Yeah. They've overdone themselves. And all of them are going bankrupt. iHeart, Cumulus, what's the one that owns the Cars 108? I can't remember now. All of those corporations have money problems. Not all of them are going bankrupt, don't get me wrong. But all of them have had money problems along the way. They've had to do restructuring and a lot of other things because they just don't know. Most radio stations now have 2 people in them. They used to have a whole staff. Now they got 2 people. Yeah. Because they can't afford more, but they also don't want more. They have it's not in their business model.
The business model became, rather than for the people, you can even replace the people that run your station, like yourself and Blondie. Like, we don't need them then. We'll just get something else until we're happy. Continuously making themselves happy in one way.
They paid a lot for big talent on the radio stations. The guys down in Detroit were making $1 million a year. So they were paying a lot of money to have the top talent, which you have to do. But they decided, well, we don't need the top talent. We can do it another way. Our model will work, even though we've never been in radio, ever.
Yeah. Reinvent the wheel in the wrongest way.
Yeah.
Who did you, I'm going back to a question I had a minute ago. What is there anything ever made you uncomfortable on the air?
Oh, probably, but I probably buried it so far down. We've had a lot of naked people on the air. We've had a lot of weirdness going on in the studio. Some of it involving myself. Dave Barber and I one time do you guys know who Dave Barber is up here in Bay City? He was really big down in the Flint area, obviously. Talk show host and did very, very well. Right. And was similarly controversial like me, and we worked on the same radio station for a while. He went on to he worked in Detroit quite a bit, but he also ended up in Rhode Island running the publicity for the Democrat Party for Rhode Island. He's a really cool dude. But he and I one night, his birthday was on the 25th, mine was on the 23rd of April. So the 24th fell on a Friday night. We went to Churchill's in downtown Flint, and we invited the public, and we had a huge party, and we were drinking, and Dave comes over to me and he goes, I got to still go do my show. Let's all go. So he pulls half the bar out, himself, me, all these other people. We take booze with us. We go on the radio station. We go on the air, and we're drunk. We're singing bar songs, and we're just drunk. David's changing his clothes in the studio while he's doing the show, and there are women in there as well. It was off the hook ugly, and our managers were out of town. And Teresa Bush, who was the producer of the show, called one of the managers, and he said, "Pull the plug."
What year was that?
That was probably 82 or 83, maybe. Probably 82. I'm going to say it was 82. So corporate flew in. We had a big meeting. They were going to they said, "You're at a fork in the road. Your career's either going here or it's going here. We're going to give you a break and give it a chance to go here, but this is your last chance." So they let us go back on the air, and we continued to operate in spite of just look. We could have blown the radio station's license that night. True. They could have lost their license.
That's a great story. That's one I've never heard. That's wild. Did you DJ or share the studio with anybody, like I don't know. You said one guy earlier. I can't remember his name. But Stern,
Don
or
Imus,
anybody.
you remember
Imus,
Don Imus,
Imus,
yeah, never-
Stern, or anybody.
Well, I mean,
or-
Stern, it was a lot of the stuff that we do. We DJs get together several times, or used to. Again, something that corporate radio kind of got rid of in a lot of ways. We used to have what was called Morning Show Boot Camp. They still have it, but it's not attended like it used to be, where everybody would come together and all those guys would be there. But I never worked with anybody like. I'm trying to think. Don Imus was the only one, huh?
Arthur P. in Detroit.
I used to go to the Riff golf outings, and I'd always hang out with those guys. I got the chance to. What's his name? Sammy Hagar was there one year, and so we had a lot of fun with the Riff guys, because the Riff guys were all friends of mine, and so we used to go to their golf outing, and Arthur was always there. The dirty little secret, he was another one. They wanted to kind of get rid of him at the end of his career because he was still getting good ratings, but he was costing him an arm and a leg. And so finally but they would never ever have gotten rid of. They would never have terminated Arthur. Yeah. And so he finally did make his way out the door, and baby went away.
Yeah, it did. Damn. Yeah, you had to. I remember when people brought up your voice, or Johnny. You've heard Arthur P. Their voices that we were in the ballpark a little bit, so it was always a Michigan
Roy Moore.
thing.
You ever hear Roy Moore?
I heard of Roy Moore.
Roy Moore, he's another one. He's been on radio in the Flint and Saginaw area for a while too, and he's got the same exact voice.
That's cool. Are you going? What's your plans for the next 10 years, Jenny? I mean,
well, I'm going to be 70 in about a month here, so I don't know. Florida sounds real good right now. I'm not ready to retire quite yet, and I probably will always be doing something. I just don't want to do something every day for the rest of my life. So what I want to try and do in maybe a couple of years is back off a little bit and just do something else.
You think you're able to write your own script doing that?
Oh, I hope so, yeah.
Good, man.
I should be able. I've got enough contacts. And plus, I'm starting a voiceover and a voice acting career. So as that develops, maybe I can completely walk out of the radio station.
Wow. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, voice acting right now is it's kind of weird because AI is going to start to be a problem.
Yes.
But what you can do right now, the way it's set up, in the old days, you used to have to go through agents and studios. Nowadays, everything, like in the music business, you can do locally. So what we do is we have home studios that cost you about $400 is all it costs you to put together a nice home studio. And you audition. There are several websites and stuff that you become members of. Fiverr's one of them, I'm sure. And these are for other things, too. If you're an artist, if you're a graphic artist, you can get on these and you get jobs. So they hire you for one job. So voice acting is one of the big things that's done that way. So there's just tons of jobs out there for stuff that's on the internet, that's on the web, game stuff, books, audio books, technical medical journals.
Wow.
All of these things that they need voices for. So I'm going to try and head down that road. As you can see, if I use my voice too much, it starts to go away, which is what's happening right now. I've been talking too much.
I was playing my kids your station this morning on the way to school, and you were on the ads. Which you've always been on the ads too, or Blondie was always on the ads up here. But it's the same to this day. Do people come saying, I just want Johnny on my ad?
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes. But they'll also say, I want Steph on my ads or somebody. Because, it's not always the right voice for that, whatever it is.
I wonder how that worked out, or if you're like, here, you get this one, you get this one.
Well, and that is the way it goes when it's not requested. Oh, okay. They do just distribute them.
Okay.
Yeah, try and make it even.
Because you're on as much as you're off. I mean, you're even on other chase stations. I hear you pop on 100.9 or whatever it is.
Right.
Your ads will come through 102.1 at Bad X. All of a sudden, somebody's bought you because you're famous in Caseville for a long time.
Right.
Which is another thing we haven't hit. The Cheeseburger Festival.
Oh, I'm gonna be up there again this year. I'm the they call me the head fool, or I can't even remember what they call it now. Grand Fool. It's the Fool's Parade, and I'm the Grand Fool. I've been the Grand Fool in it for 20 years.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'm glad I thought of that, because I was like, man, I wanted you to bring that up. That's cool. That whole cheeseburger thing is huge for you.
That has become gargantuan.
Yeah, that's quite a deal.
You guys got to get up there, man. I keep telling everybody, people, I keep hearing about it. I don't know if I should go. Believe me, you go and you will be sold on it forever. It's crazy. On a Wednesday night, up in the Thumb, there'll be 150, 200,000 people for the parade. On a Wednesday night.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Wow. What do you do to get away for a break, man? What's your breaks? What do they look
I like going to the Caribbean. That's my favorite place.
Caribbean?
And golfing is another thing that I like to do to get away from everything.
You're also a real family guy too, so
yeah. I don't know if my kids enjoy that much, but yeah.
I often wonder what you're, and it's just because the radio is the radio. They're going to use what they use all day long. But how do you hide away for a little while just to take a break?
I don't find any of that a problem. I'm not trying to sound weird about this, but you got into radio for people to listen to you. You're trying to sell yourself. So if somebody recognizes you, got to appreciate that. That's why you're there.
Your heart's still in it, dude. I love that.
Well, that part of it has never left me and will never leave me. And I'm trying to learn also humility. So not working too well tonight, by the way.
No,
we're here to celebrate you, my friend.
Bet.
We're here to celebrate you. Thank you for everything you've done for us.
Yeah, let me ask you one last thing. Has Bob Seger ever been on your show?
No. And, I have regretted that all my career. We've been to every Seger show we could go to. I've never been able to. Nobody has. He is such a private guy. Now his manager is, he'll talk to you all day, but Bob, you cannot get him to do anything. And I guess it's understandable. It's his choice. But I would have loved to have met. Now Ted, I've had him on my. Sometimes you can't shut him up.
Yeah.
It's almost like a question mark in a sense.
In a lot of ways, except Ted's are more well planned out. Question mark's just out there.
Yeah.
Ted's got this drive going, and he will just, and he won't stop talking. He just like I'm doing.
And you saying Punch Andrews was talkative?
Yeah, Punch Andrews. You can talk to Punch Andrews all day.
I don't remember hearing any Punch Andrews interviews. That's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Man.
Not so much interviews, but you can get him on the phone and talk to him. He won't go on a record because he's Bob Seger's agent.
Yeah, right.
But he
He's
will
still
talk
around.
to you. He will talk to you.
Yeah.
But yeah, Seger, no. We tried to get, at one time I actually did reach out through Punch. We, in Frankenmuth, we could afford it. And they wanted to put a concert on down in the park in Frankenmuth. But his thing was, at this point in his career, I just want to do big stadiums and a few shows. I don't want to perform every night, and I don't want to go to a little venue where it's going to sell out, but there's only going to be 12,000 people. He's used to 40,000 people or 50,000 people or even more. So, that's the way he did it. So we didn't get him in Frankenmuth. We kept throwing money. We kept saying, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
No.
I think Seger was also pretty unique with Punch, as in, man, when it came time to him finally do Letterman,
right?
I mean, he pulled the plug on one of them because Letterman wouldn't do what he needed. He wanted the band to play with him, and he goes, "No, you're going to use my band." He was Bob Seger in the 80s. It was in the 80s.
Wow.
And and Letterman goes, "Well, we kind of do the jam thing. It's not that big of a deal." And he goes, "It is to me," and he didn't show up. He ended up coming on years later. I was reading an article on it,
right?
How stickler Bob was to making sure his career stayed the path he wanted to have.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, is there anybody you have more respect for in the Michigan music business? I mean, there may be people you have as much respect for, but he is just, we were talking about this today at Susky, a couple of the guys that there are musicians on the side, and we were saying, is there a song that Bob Seger plays that you don't like?
Right.
No. He's singing my life.
Yeah.
Everything he sings is something in my life, and we kind of progress through life in a lot of the same stages, and it was like, wow. So, God, yeah, I think we have a real star in Michigan, and it's Bob Seger. He is
Michigan rock and roll.
He is it.
Yeah.
That leads me to another question.
Mitch Ryder.
Oh, Mitch is cool too.
Well,
I love them all.
There's all kinds of great artists.
Michigan is huge with
Bob
artists.
Seger personifies it.
But if you ask everybody, name your favorite Michigan artist, 9 times out of 10, you're going to get Bob Seger. Every single. People love him so much, and his music is so good.
Yeah. And obviously, you haven't interviewed Madonna, probably. I'm assuming.
No.
The other big one right there.
Oh, yeah, it's a pretty big one. And Stevie Wonder, that a lot of people don't know.
Yeah, Saginaw, too.
Stevie Wonder was for like a day. I said they wrapped him up in a blanket and took him out of town. You're not going to be from here.
What was the favorite show you've put on all those years? I know you've been it could be anywhere, not just Michigan, but you were like, holy crap, we put on a killer show for a band.
Those oldies paloozas that we used to have in Frankenmuth. When HNN, it was wonderful. During those years, before the casinos decided to start throwing gobs of money at these bands that had been long forgotten, they were charging, you get Felix Cavallari for $5,000. You could get Herman's, what's his name?
Peter Noonan?
Yeah, Peter Noonan, for maybe 10. That's all they were charging. Now you'd have to come up with 100,000 if you want. If you want Huey Lewis, well, he doesn't play anymore. But we checked him out when this whole casino thing started, and his price went up to like 150,000 or something. We were getting bands very inexpensively, and we had everybody. We had Sly and the Family Stone minus Sly because he'd been thrown out of the band. But we had the Family Stone. We had Felix Cavaliere. We had Peter Noon. We had Johnny Rivers. We must have had a dozen huge acts in a couple of years.
You did, yeah.
Down there in River, and we were charging $5.96 to get in. It was crazy. But then, casinos, and they pay these guys so much money, you can no longer pull off community concerts.
Yeah, I know Johnny Rivers plays in the casinos in Louisiana.
There you go.
A lot.
He's probably making a lot more than we paid him.
Right.
Yeah, we had him out. Gary Puckett. Who else we had? I can't remember all, but we had just a pile of great artists.
A lot of years
after, for like 5 or 6 years in a row.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Soaring Eagle has kind of done that to this area.
Well, and now Soaring Eagle is spending even more money, and they're getting some big, hot, classic rock acts.
Motley Crue.
They're bringing in the cream of the crop now. They must be paying through the nose. Is all I can figure. But
how much does politics still play into your broadcast?
I'm done with it. I'm done with it. I'll make a slide remark.
You've gone a lot of directions with that, and it was a lot of on and off buttons, which is politics in a nutshell. Yeah. And I'm just curious because we don't get to hear you up here anymore.
Right.
But every time I've seen you, had you on the radio or played, or I don't hear that from you anymore. Kind of more, we heard a little bit, but I heard you more then, so I'm just curious.
Right. No, well, it's a couple of things that were in play there. We did very well doing politics at H&N. We were number one for 25 years. No radio station that plays oldies music, or we didn't call it oldies, but at the end there was classics, ever has a reign like that. There's a lot of reasons for that, but one of the main things was we were doing politics when politics was a hot subject. Everybody wanted to hear about it. There were a lot of great talk shows on the air that were making the most money. It was the biggest thing in radio was talk at that time. So we decided to be political, and we were fine with it. We did well with it. When I left there, they said specifically at the Fox, we don't want to have it. And I said, well, thank you. Because I frankly got to the point where I was sick and tired of talking politics. And I think the public, I have a little bit of a feel for people. I think after 50 years of doing this, I get an idea, a sense that comes on to me about what the audience likes or doesn't like at any given point in history. And when talk radio got to be the only thing people were listening to, and politics got as divisive as it got, you started hearing a lot of, I don't want to hear politics anymore. I don't want to hear it on the radio. I don't want to hear it anywhere. I'm sick and tired of talking about the president. I'm sick and tired of talking about our governor. Don't want to hear it. And they will tune you out immediately if you put it on. So basically, their thinking and my thinking came together at the same time when I went to work there. And I have not done any of it, and I don't miss it one single bit.
How long have you been at the Fox now?
It was 17, so 7 years. This will be 7 years this month.
Phew, man.
Yeah.
Wow. I was curious about that. I remember that was talk shows on the radio talk just messed with that, and everything got.
And there's still room for it, but not like it used to be.
Some people want to hear your music on your channel and you,
right?
And they want that to work.
But they want it to be entertaining. They don't want it to be divisive. They don't. They're sick of people arguing. They're sick of people calling people names. Everybody's sick of that. I've had enough of it. I mean, I get it. It was. I think that I believed in what I said at the time, and I still do in a lot of ways. I still have a lot of those values, but I'm sick of people getting in each other's faces and screaming at each other, and friendships ending and never talking to anybody again, and Uncle Jim can't come over anymore. And I'm sick of that. Yeah. That has only happened in the last 10 years, really.
Sure. Yeah.
And there's no room for it anymore. We got to be family. Our world is so screwed up. We've got to get together. Come on, everybody, get together now.
All right. Johnny Burke, thank you for coming on our show. Thank you for giving us your history, dude, and thank you for being a brotherhood of Michigan music and all the heart you've put into it to this day.
Thanks for this. And Gary, what a great place you have here, this rock museum, Rock Legends Museum.
Michigan Rock and Roll Legends.
Thank you, getting it right. I need a card.
Oh, he had to give me one the first few podcasts.
But you have a really, really cool place here, and we got to get more people in this place. You probably already bring a bunch of people in, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's been a real great thing for the museum, and It's kind of added a cool factor to the Historical Museum of Bay County.
It is first class.
Proud to say.
If you haven't been here, folks, and you're listening to this, you got to get over here. Spend an afternoon in this place. You're going to love it.
It's unbelievable. Johnny Burke.
Yeah,
Thank you guys. Thank you for allowing me to polish my ego.
Johnny was great.
Thank you, Gary.
Dude.
Scott, thank you, brother. I appreciate you, man. That's so
On behalf of our hosts, this podcast wouldn't be here without generosity of the Bay City Historical Museum, which hosts the Rock and Roll Legends Hall of Fame. We'd also like to thank all of our guests and especially to the listeners. The MMHP is found at 989.network or where all podcasts can be found. You can find updated information as well as Dr. J and Sir Fred's Picks of the Week on Facebook. Also on Facebook, check out Mr. Mike's Local Music Live series and Scott's Mid-Mitten 15 from Harvest Canteen Studios, featuring one-on-one interviews with Michigan music artists. You can connect with Scott on the web at scottbakermusic.com, Dr. J at michiganrockandrolllegends.com, Sir Fred at fredrife.com, and Mr. Mike on YouTube as Mr. BT1. That's MRBTEE and the number 1.
On behalf of us hosts, Dr. J, Sir Fred, Mr. Mike, and myself, we'd like to thank Mr. Eddie Switek, the voice of the MMHP and the 989. Dude. Oh.
So you knew Tom Gilardi.
Yeah, I did. That was one of the first guys I met in the radio promotion
He
business.
was a great. Well, he's still alive.
Is he really?
He's like in his 95 or something.
Oh my gosh.
But when I worked at School Kids in Ann Arbor, he was one of our distributors. I think he worked for Action out of Cleveland at the time. And he had so many stories because
Right.
he was at Capitol when the Beatles came out. And all those stories about that.
You going to get him on this summer with us? Or is he going to...
You should get Tom. Talk about now here's a wealth of knowledge in that guy, if he could still recall it. I can't recall half of anything anymore. But
yeah, I don't know his health situation.
I met him when he was in Cleveland because we were at a college radio station. We were begging for records. That's how we first met him in the early days.
We can always do an afternoon show too.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. To have him, if he's
Like a Saturday.
can give us information. I mean, there's certain guys that can't, and